there, friends. Nice to meet you again after a short pause I had last 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks since I've streamed, but last week I was doing a Cypress quiz with the awesome Cypress UK community. So I think there's a video on their meetup group. So if you want to check that out, you can check that out. It was real fun, and I like to thank Marie and Giri that they organized such an event. That was a lot of fun. So today I have prepared something for you, something that I have already prepared in the blog. So my voice is low. All right, so let's fix that. Let's maybe bring it up a little. Hopefully that's a little better. Let me know if that's better. Thanks for the notice. I try to combine the music and the voice, and sometimes it's not the best. So thank you for that. You have improved the stream with your feedback. All right, so back to what I was talking about. I made a blog yesterday. Yesterday it came out, starting with TypeScript in Cypress. And today I would like to explore this a little more. I would like to talk about this a little more and maybe demonstrate what I have written in this blog, and show you what actually was how I actually explained that. But maybe this would be a slightly different form. So if you read the blog, good for you. If you have questions, feel free to ask them. If you haven't read it, well, this would be kind of a walkthrough over what I have written. So basically what I did over a couple of last weeks, I was trying to play with TypeScript a little more and to get it going and try to understand what is happening in TypeScript, because developers seem to love it. They seem to like preach everywhere about how TypeScript is so awesome, and having played with it, I think I kind of understand what they mean by that. So let's jump into it. I'm going to copy this first block of code where I have just a simple test where I visit my app and create a board. So let's jump into that. Again, I'm going to be using my application, which is sort of a clone of the Trello app, and it's sort of my kind of take on the Trello board, and it's like a really simple app which you can just npm install and npm start. So I've done the installation, I have done the start, and on localhost 3000 it's already running. Let me just open it. Yeah, so this is how it looks. So let's fire up Cypress and try to write that test. That will be npx Cypress open. And I'll wait for it to start. Alright, so here's my Cypress window, and I haven't updated Cypress, but I'm not going to do that now. It's not really needed for this, because right now at the moment I think we are good with the version that we have. TypeScript is natively supported I think from version like 4.4 or something like that. So we can just create a TypeScript file, run it in our Cypress, and it will just work. Nothing needs to be set up. Although, yeah, one thing needs to be set up, and I'll get to that. So let's write a test. Let's write a test.js first. So let's write a simple JavaScript test. And I have copied this code from our blog, and it is a creating board block. So I visit my page, create a board, type enter. So let's run it to see what it does. And here is my test.js. So I'll run this. It'll open my browser, hopefully in the right window. No, it's in the other one. So I'll have to drag it over here. And now we're seeing this. All right. Good. So I'm getting some extra logs over here for code coverage, and I have talked about code coverage in the past. You can check that out in my YouTube channel, and also on the blog. But we're not going to talk about that today. But there are just this before all and after each and after all hooks. So in case you're wondering what that is it. That's the Cypress coverage plugin. But now let's focus on the test. So yeah, we got our test, and with the timeline feature we can see what our test does. It visits our page, loads the list of my boards, which is 0 at the moment, and then it will click on this button, type in this input field, and after that the app redirects us right into the board. So we have board 806, etc, etc. So yeah, we have a simple test. So let's say this, since we are in a Trello application, and these boards are basically the central element in our UI, this creating board, we can assume that this is going to be happening pretty much all the time. We're going to be creating the boards and testing them all around. So let's make these two actions, let's make them into a function. And for now we're just going to create a simple function. So I'm going to take this over here, and I'm going to create a new function, and that function will be called add board. And since I want to make it a little more dynamic, it's going to take an input. So I'll write myself an arrow function, I'll paste my code inside here, and the input I'm not using, but let's use it over here. So when I call my function, oh, not like this. All right, so when I call my function like this, I'm going to do add board. Then basically I will be, whatever I input here as a parameter will be used for this type command. So if I don't put anything, then my test is probably going to fail. Oh, it's not going to fail. I can actually type enter and it will create a board with the empty. No, it doesn't, but somehow in my test I'm managing to create a board. Well, that's new information for me. Oh, I know. It actually types the undefined, so it converts the undefined value to the text. That's something I didn't know before. But yeah, so we'll type undefined and then tap enter. So the result will be this undefined board, but it will not be the value of undefined, but it will be the string of undefined. But yeah, we have used our function, but we have not added a text inside of it. So that's something we might not want for this function. We might want to have some kind of checking, right? If this is a function that needs an input, it would be nice to have that input checked, and this is exactly what TypeScript does for us. So just changing these the last two things. I lost the word. Just changing the thing from JS to TS, so making it a TypeScript file, that's going to make a difference for us. It is actually going to underline our function, and the TypeScript is going to tell us that we are expecting one argument, but we got 0. So that's not good, right? We want an argument in that function. So as we type our code, we get a feedback on how to, what the functions that we are using, what we should provide in them. So right now I can provide anything, right? So I can provide a number and it will be happy. I can provide a boolean, so that would be, for example, false, and that would still work. If I type undefined, will that work? I don't actually know. Yeah, it still works. We got an argument and TypeScript is happy. But what we want here is a string. So if we want our function to be a string, then we can define it like this. Not sting, but string. Alright, so unexpected token. Seems like I'm doing something wrong. Not sure what I'm doing wrong. It seems like an error from ESLint, and not sure why that happens. Let's maybe restart ESLint decisions. ESLint, yeah, for this workspace. Will that do a difference? Or am I missing something? I think this should be valid, so I don't know. Maybe I have something over here set up that's not valid. I'm really bad at ESLint, and I should probably catch up on reading this all these things. But we are having an unexpected token, so probably ESLint is not set up to work with TypeScript in this project. So maybe what happens if we delete that? Will that help? Probably not. Yeah, okay, so we can ignore that, although this would make this demonstration much nicer if we didn't have that. But for now, let's ignore that. So alright, now that we have a string inside of here, this works. Our function is happy. But if we made this an array, we would actually get an error that argument of type string is not assignable to parameter of type string. And this string with these brackets is actually a string array. So if we would accept a string array or array of strings, this would make TypeScript happy. But since we obviously, by the nature of our function, we only want a string, then this is not good. So we want to have just a simple string, right? Let's type something nicer here, like new board. All right. So now I have saved my tests. Doesn't seem like it ran. Not sure why. Let's run that again. Maybe something got stuck over here. And yeah, okay, now we're cooking. So we got our new board. I have this nice functionality in this app. If I type F2, I have this thing over here, and I can just reset my application. That's pretty handy if you need to reset that. And since I use this only for for the testing purposes and demonstrations and workshops, that is actually pretty useful. I could, of course, write a before each hook and reset my database, reset my app, but that's not something I always can do, or I might be at the point of the workshop where I'm not there yet. So I will just ask the attendees to do them by themselves. But instead of like clicking and deleting one board after the other, instead of that, they can just type an F2 and delete them all. All right, so we got our TypeScript file. We got our first function. Seriously, I don't know what this is. don't know what is happening over here, but it seems like it is coming from ESLint. Maybe if we disable it, ESLint, it's really bugging me. Can we? How do we disable ESLint? Disable ESLint, no. ESLint. Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on that, but yeah, it's just making noise over here and I don't like that. So yeah. Alright, so let's just ignore it. Maybe if I come up with something, I try to fix that. Yeah, so far, not sure. I can see that there is some, yeah, no ESLint configuration found. Okay, so then just ignore that, right? Yeah, I'd like to fix that, but I guess I can leave it at that. All right, if I have an idea, I'll try again. But so far, ignore this thing. It's not coming from TypeScript. It's coming from ESLint, and yeah, not sure why. All right, so we got our function over here, right? So we have taken that out, and with TypeScript, we actually don't need this line anymore. So if you notice, this is a pretty handy line if you're writing your tests in JavaScript. I don't know how IntelliJ works or other text editors, but in VS Code you can actually, if you type this at the beginning of your file, you're actually using types from Cypress. So in a way you are already using TypeScript. And what this means, that the thing that you are using types from Cypress, that means that whenever you type the CY, you'll get your commands over here. You get the autocomplete function, and you get everything you would get with TypeScript. So well, not everything, but a lot of things. So for example, you can look into let me just, I think you can look into what the arguments should be. So you get the JS doc. Oh yeah, this is it. So you get this documentation right inside of your code. So you can look into what the parameters are. So you get URL, you get options, you get a link to the documentation. So if I click on that, I'll go right inside the docs and see what the visit command is all about. And by the way, the documentation is stellar. Make sure if you're working with Cypress, this should be like in your bookmarks, and you should be using it a lot. Well, I learned a lot from the docs, so you should do too. That's my advice to you. I know you didn't ask for it. I'm giving it to you anyway. All right, so back to this line. So we got this reference type Cypress, which you can use in JavaScript, and it's going to give you the autocomplete functionalities. You actually don't need to have that in TypeScript. What you need to do, or what you need to have, is have your TypeScript installed inside your package JSON, or installed in your project rather. So I have TypeScript over here. So you would install that just like any other package. So you go npm install, or you go yarn add, and that works for you. The other thing you need to do is to define your ts-config JSON file, and this is basically a configuration file for JSON, for TypeScript. What I did, and what I think, like, for starters is just okay if you do, is to copy that from documentation. So in the documentation, you can see the installation and configuring the tsconfig. So these are all the options that you can see here, and for starters, you should be okay just copying this and pasting it inside your tsconfig file. Of course, there are many different configurations you can use. There are many capabilities of TypeScript that you can make use of, and honestly, I don't know, like, I'm just scratching the surface of the whole TypeScript world, so I don't ask me for too much advice on how to define that. Like, that's I'm still learning over here. But what's interesting and what I wanted to point out, that these types, this attribute of types is actually the array or list of types that you will be using in your project. So this line, these types Cypress, is actually the same thing that we have been using here in our tests JS file or test.ts. So we are referencing the types from Cypress, and just the same thing we are doing over here in the tsconfig.json. So these are just a couple of steps you need to do to enable TypeScript in Cypress. Otherwise, if you would skip that, then simply clicking on the test.ts file would not work for you. But if you have your config, if you have your TypeScript, then everything should be working. All right. So yeah, so let's do something interesting. So this function, it doesn't have too much value sitting over here in our test.ts file, right? Because this is supposed to be reusable, right? We want to use that all over our project, and right now we are just using it inside our a single file. So, and I have a suspicion that I already have an add board function somewhere over here. So I'd like to keep my commands in the support folder and inside commands folder. And I have add board UI. All right. So I don't have add board, I just have add board UI. And basically does the same thing, just uses slightly different selectors, but it can take an argument. And although it is written in TypeScript, it doesn't really use the types. Yeah. So most of the JavaScript code you already have, you can actually use with TypeScript. Although it's basically the same thing, right? So you're not really using the value that TypeScript gives you. This is just any parameter. So if I were to use this function and just type, I don't know, a number in it or a boolean, TypeScript wouldn't really mind, and but my test wouldn't work. So yeah, let's take this add board. I'm going to make it a separate command. So let's make this a Cypress command, and I will copy it like this, and this is going to make TypeScript set. Not sure why this is a problem, but it seems like not sure why this is. And again, it seems like the ESLint is complaining about some unexpected token, but I don't know what's so unexpected about CY. So yeah, okay. So let's create a new file, and that's going to be called, let's call it the same name that we already have, at board.ts. So here I have it, but since this is not yet a Cypress function, let's make it so. Let's use the Cypress commands add API to define a function that's called add board. And we can actually do two things. We can either define it over here. So the second parameter of this add function would be just the whole function, or we can keep it like that and just use add board as an argument. So, but I think, yeah, probably need to. What is it complaining about? Yeah, it's used before declaration, so we need to add it over here. And this is going to work, right? So there's no problem with that. So the second argument is actually the function over here. So let's, I don't know, let's use it like this. Well, I think we can. All right, so now I'm thinking, what should I do with this? I should probably add it to my test. So let's try and import that. See what happens. And support commands add board. And seems that we are good. So let's type cy add board. This is going to complain because I have just adding these Cypress commands add doesn't really do too much in terms of having the type or this function declared as something that this cy object contains. We'll do that later. But let's see if it works. Let's see if we have actually succeeded in adding this custom command into our function. And it seems like we did. Alright, so we are using data cy, clicking. Alright, that looks like our function. So hopefully I'm not missing anything. And again, I don't understand what this is. Peak problem. Can I peek the problem? Yeah, that's not really telling me much. Okay. So let's now focus on the second thing, right? So we want to add this custom command or this add board as a custom command, and there are actually two ways you can do that. The first one is described in our in the documentation. Let's see, types for custom commands. So there's this example of how you can add data cy, so you can create somehow of a shortcut if you have lots of data cy selectors in your application. You can just make a custom command, and data cy would just be a get command with the data cy thing filled in for you. So you just enter the value, make your code a little more readable. All right, and the second thing, what you need to do is basically add these data cy or your custom function to add it to the namespace of Cypress or to the interface. Basically add this as something that is valid when I type cy dot and thing. Oh, thank you RetroBetter for the advice. So to disable ESLint, I can add ESLint enable false in my settings JSON. Let's see if that works. Maybe that will help. It seems like ESLint is acting out. Lint, do I find it here? ESLint format. Yeah, I thought I could maybe find it over here, but let's add it. Let's add it as you said. ESLint. What was it? Enable. It doesn't seem to have this kind of option, but okay, let's see, and let's make it false. Seems like it's complaining this setting is deprecated. Disable ESLint using the extension viewlet. Don't know what that means. And it didn't seem to do the trick for me. But yeah, what I can do actually is look into the ESLint, and disable it for this workspace. Reload required. Okay, I will reload that. That's actually going to kill my application and my Cypress. Let's see. It looks like it might have helped. Activating extensions. Hopefully this will make the code a little clearer for us. It seems like we're not getting errors in weird places, just at the place that we are expecting it to have the error. Nice, thank you, Retrobear. That was help. It was getting annoying. Alright, so let's npm start the application. Let's start also the Cypress, npx Cypress open. And let's see what we can do next. So what we will be doing, is we're going to add the created addboard function into the namespace of Cypress. And Cypress advises to create this index.dts file. So it's a TypeScript definitions file. So we can do two things here. We can add a data function or our custom function and add some typing into it. So what should the value be, and etc. So this chainable element is going to mean that what our function actually returns is an element, and we can chain off in our Cypress to use that element in some other function. So we can use should be visible function for the element. But yeah, okay. So I have already created this definitions file, and I have added it into the types folder, which I think is kind of a convention to have a types folder and have those definitions in there. Not sure where I've seen it, but I made it so like this. And you can already see that we have our functions over here. So I have already some custom functions, and I have made definitions for them. So let's just add it onto the top, and we're going to add board. That's our function. We got our input, and that's going to be a string. And what we want to return, actually, do we want to return? I think not. I think we could just use void, and that's not going to return anything. And when I save my file, I no longer get an error, and I can see that it returns void and that the input is string. So that's cool. It seems to work. When we hover over our visit command, I can see that there's quite a lot more going on, especially this documentation. And this is something that's called JSDoc. And it's actually not even required to use TypeScript for the JSDoc to work. You can actually use that in your JavaScript functions. So if you want to start with that, you can start with that now. And to enable JSDoc, I'll just type /* and over here, if I type enter, VS Code is actually going to help me a little with adding the right documentation. So I have my parameter here, and it already read that in this addboard I have this parameter called input, and I can describe what it does. So that would be the name of the board we are creating. Awful explanation, but does the job. And when I type tab, I get to the top, so I can just give a general explanation of what it does. So it's going to create a new board via UI. I actually have the same explanation over here, but I have this param over here. So now when I save it and hover over my add board function, you can see that I have my param input and the name of the board we are creating. So that's the explanation that I have just added here. And this add param, this is some kind of a special argument that I can use in my doc. For example, I can add example, and I can just type an example of usage. So I would add cy add board and type in the new board. That's how you use this function. So now again, if I hover, I can see that I have this nice example here. If at one day I decided that this function is deprecated, I think it works like this. Maybe let's test. And yeah, VS Code is going to actually strike it through. So if you have updated Cypress to version 6 and you are using root and server commands, you can actually see that these are these have this strike through in your VS Code. Probably other text editors are handling it maybe slightly differently. I don't know. So yeah, I have my function. It is deprecated. I should no longer be using it. I should try to avoid using that. So this is JS doc. You can use it like this. All right. So now that we have, so there are many ways, or there are two ways that I know of how you can add these definitions and how you can add your custom command into the CY context. And the second one I have found on Cypress GitHub, and I was trying to find a way of how maybe I could have my add board, TS, and everything in a single file. I wondered if that could be achieved, and I have found on the GitHub one other way of how we can actually add our command into the Cypress namespace, and that would be over here. Where is it? Yeah, it's over here. So I think we can, this is duplicated. I think it works like this, and basically we are adding that to the global, we're adding to the Cypress namespace our add board, which is type of add board. I kind of know what this is, but it feels like it's kind of hard to explain, because I in theory I kind of know what it does, but yeah, hard for me to explain because I'm just learning this. And it seems like it didn't work. Maybe because I wonder, do I need to, like, I was using slightly different approach. I was in my blog where I was exporting that. Yeah, probably this is it. Yeah, okay, so I need to export that and add and use this add board and import it in my index.ts file. So I'm going to import add board from where is that? Commands add board. Does that work? Yeah, from. Good. And it seems like this should be working. Let's look into our test and see if we are up and running, but it seems like we are. Yeah, all good. And what I'm doing over here is that I have everything in a single file. Well, not everything. I'm still importing that file into index.js and adding the custom Cypress command. For some reason, I think that might be a personal preference, but I like this approach a little more. And we still have a couple of minutes, and I wanted to show you one more thing, because we have declared that the input can be string, but we can actually we actually have more ways of how we can define this. So I've shown you already that you can do string array, and we're going to be accepting only a string array. But we can actually define our own types. So it goes something like this. So I declare a type in a similar way that I would declare a variable, and I'm going to call it options, for example. And that options, or let's call it options. And that options may be of type string, right? So instead of just using a general string thing, I can use that type of my input should be options, right? And if this were an object, I could actually define a whole object of attributes that should have different kinds of types: string, array, number, or it could be different types like this. So I can actually import different types and use them across my project. So for example, if I have my app added in written in TypeScript, I can use types from over there. And if I have some kind of strict type checking enabled, I could find out very quickly that there's something wrong with my tests. And yeah, okay, so we got our options, and there are nice ways we can play with that. Actually, add these options over here. Let's say, for example, we not only want to that the input for this add board function that it should be string, but let's define only a couple of names of our boards that are allowed. So let's name, for example, new board, or we can use this pipe and add, I don't know, rate board. So now when I save this and have my types defined and try to use it, well, new board is working, but if I delete a character, it's going to complain about this. And what's even nicer is that when I start typing, I actually have my options over here in VS Code, and I can autocomplete it just like that. So yeah, for this particular use case, that is not like super useful in case I just don't want everything to be the same string or be just a couple of strings. But I can imagine that there might be some really cool use cases for this. Well, for example, if I type should, well, I cannot type should for this because we have defined that this is a void, right? So it does not exist on type void. So let's, I don't know, let's select some element. Let's select a button and don't really care. But when I type should and start typing, this is what I get here, and this is pretty useful. I don't know about you, but this improves my workflow quite a lot. So whenever I want to check that the element is visible, I just type VI and I have these two options, and bam, there I have it. And in the same way, you can customize your custom commands with your custom types. So you have, if you have a series of different inputs that you want to accept, you can just accept those. And I don't actually need to write it like this, like type options, but I can write it over here, and that will work too, right? So new board is okay, and eBoard is not okay. And if I start typing, then I get suggestions. So that's great. And I create my grade board, and I'm at home. So these are just a couple of ways that you can use TypeScript, and I understand, like, for all the TypeScript experts out there, this is rather primitive, but this has been so far what I have found out. And if you have any suggestions or ideas of how you use TypeScript, let's talk on Discord. How about you join and tell us how you use TypeScript? I'd be really interested in learning more about this. If you're just starting, hope this has helped you and encourage you to try TypeScript. Maybe it will be useful for you, maybe not. Use your own judgment and experiment, play with that and see what works, see what doesn't. That has been my approach, worked for me. Hopefully it may also work for you. Okay, I think we got everything, or I have gone through everything that I had to say today. So thanks again for coming, and yeah, thanks again for chatting, RetroBear, as always. Thank you for the help, and yeah, see you next time. That'll probably be next week. We'll see. Stay tuned. Thanks again, and have a nice day. Bye.